There are people here who are not familiar with many of the details or things that have about the case. I'm just going to read over a timeline. So in 2010, WikiLeaks released the video Collateral Murder, which was leaked to them by Chelsea Manning. The video showed the killing of Iraqis, including a journalist. 2010, Afghan war logs and Iraq war logs were released. In 2010, Assange was accused of rape in Sweden. He was never charged there. He returned to Sweden for questioning, but he fought extradition. He feared that he would be turned over to the U.S. 2012, Assange seeks asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. In London, yeah. In 2013, Swedish prosecutors attempted to close the case, but they were dissuaded by the British. In 2016, WikiLeaks releases DNC emails, which they say were leaked, and forensic computer evidence confirms a leak and not a hack. Assange was granted Ecuadorian citizenship in 2017. But in 2018, a new government in Ecuador cut off his communication, removed his citizenship after receiving $4 billion in an IMF loan. In 2019, Chelsea Manning was jailed for refusing to testify before a grand jury. Also in 2019, the UK removes Assange from the embassy after Ecuador revokes his citizenship. U.S. indictment charging him under the Espionage Act is unsealed. He was sent to Belmarsh Prison, where he remains today. Eastern District of Virginia is a hanging court where acquittals are rare. In 2019, UN Rapporteur Nils Melzner described his treatment in the embassy and in jail as meeting the definition of torture, as just described. In 2019, Sweden officially drops the sexual assault charges. In 2021, British judge declares against sending him to the U.S., citing his poor health, but also refuses to release him on bail. So that is just a quick timeline so people can understand, a little bit more about this case. And I just was wondering if you all wanted to share, anything about Julian, did you have a hint that he would be this kind of person that would take this kind of risk and stand out in this way and be able to make this kind of impact while he was growing up, when he was your brother and your son and when y'all were younger? Did you have hints about this person that he ended up being, this person in the world?
Yeah, I think whenever I've known Julian, he was always trying to use his skills, to stop injustice basically in the world. And one way he used to do that was he made in the early 2000s he worked on some encryption software called Rubber Hose, which was developed for journalists who would say travel over a border and get pulled over by police. They would be tortured, and it was a multi-layered encryption program. So if they had a USB stick and the state was torturing them, they could give one password, and that would open one layer, and the second layer would remain undetectable. So the torturers would be like, we found it, we found everything. But the second layer would hide the information, so the actual leakers or people who were giving the information to journalists would remain protected. So from a very early time, he's always been interested in how do we hold states to account, how do we prevent injustice around the world, and how do we expose injustice, and that sort of developed from there. And in 2006 he started WikiLeaks, and obviously, that sort of eventually grew and grew to what it is today. So he's definitely had this keen sense of what is right, and and how the truth will really just destroy injustice around the world.
there were the Swedish were allegations. They weren't charged, and those allegations were never developed. They're just there to ruin and smear the character of Julian, particularly, and to divert our attention from the heinous crimes that were exposed in the Iraq war files, in the Afghan war files, and in the Guantanamo files. It's an endless list. As for Julian, he always had a fascination for fighting for justice and a dislike of lies, particularly lies from the state. So asserting constantly that freedom only comes through knowledge. You've got to know stuff to know where you're free. And so that's been his attitude. Also, he did set up an investigation back in the early days and received a commendation for it, for tracking pedophiles. Yeah, tracking pedophiles on the internet, and he received a commendation from. So the suffering, the deliberate cruelty to people is nauseating to Julian and to me and Gabrielle, and I guess to you. So something that we fight against with all our strength. There's just no need to go and bomb Iraq and murder in the process 1 million people, or have people like Madam Albright say on television when asked about 500,000, can you imagine the grief? 500,000 children destroyed their lives. The grief that the mums and dads felt, 500,000, and she said, oh well, we think it's worth it. Well, these people are just monsters, and so we fight against them. Thank you.